everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SurgeCast. As always, we would love for you to give us a follow and everywhere that you find us on socials at the SurgeCast on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, honestly, anywhere you find the SurgeCast. Also on TikTok at the.surgecast. Give us a follow, like, subscribe, comment, all of those fun things. We'll see you over there. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SurgeCast. I'm so excited to be back this week. Unfortunately, Zach is not with us, but I think by popular demand, the paid intern is joining us again. Well, joining me again this week for this episode. How we doing?
Well, I'm back, so I feel great about that. Haven't been kicked off yet, back behind the camera, but doing good. Spirits are high these days.
Yeah, honestly, the Canes, it feels like our team is back. The mojo's flowing, even with some sickness going around, which I think is going around for everyone. Because you gotta love the spring in North Carolina. You've got pollen, you've got freezing temperatures, and then you got some days where you feel like you're in the summer. And I think even that hits when you're on and off the ice. So we've definitely had that go through our locker room. But even with that, it's not really stopping the guys because I feel like we're on a groove. What do you think?
Overall, yes. I mean, 10 out of the past 12 games. I think Taylor Hall said that on his NHL Network interview. Not bad. Not bad at all. So you'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, it feels like they got hot at the beginning of the season and kind of kept that going for a little bit. It had a few slumps, um, had a few down periods, but now, at the beginning of the season, they did just enough to get them at the top of the division. They maintained it even with the kind of slumps and bad streaks they had. And now we're back at the part where, hey, we're doing well again and we're going to maintain where we are in the league. Especially there's a little bit of kerfuffle going on in the standings below us. So I'm glad we're not really quite in that chaotic mess below us. Which we'll talk about a little bit later because the wild card is so interesting and I love that we're not a part of it. But we got to talk about, we were saying we were missing some people maybe due to sickness, but we've been missing one key player for how many games is it now?
It's been 6 games that one Mr. Andrei Svechnikov has missed. That was the upper body injury suffered against the Winnipeg Jets. And all things are looking up. I know Rod kind of teased him maybe coming back for one of the California trip games, maybe coming back for the Nashville games. But Svech said he had to listen to the doctors. He said, I'm not going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. And then he actually was out 2 to 3 weeks. So he will hopefully be coming back Friday, the game against Montreal. Hopefully he shows up because Fetch during the season, I know Mike called him out, which I'll call Fetch out. Like, brother, show up. Brother, be Mr. 40 goals for us because to be one of the highest paid players on the team, we need you to show up. We need you to score the goals. Again, Mike Maniscalco said, hey, 40-goal season, brother. Obviously, the injuries is going to impact that a little bit. We need him to show up because if Svech plays at his best, then this is a team that is very dangerous. But if Svech plays so, then we're missing that. I think there's a reason why he's not on the top line because Jackson Blake has fit in so well and Svech hasn't been pulling his weight for what he's been paid.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad we actually didn't put him in with the Nashville Predators, even though it was like maybe a 50-50, because why would you risk coming back a little bit too early for maybe a chippy game against a team that's at the bottom of the league? Like, it's not a throwaway game per se, but it's also like, I don't know if that's worth him, coming back too soon. And it's been kind of weird having him out because his injury kind of happened. Like, no one really saw how he got injured. And then all of a sudden he's out a couple of games. And then you're also like, okay, I didn't know it was going to be this bad that he's out more games. But again, no need to rush him back just because you've had guys like Taylor Hall and your fourth liners and like Jank stepping up and really playing everything that they can. Because once he comes into the lineup, you got to start thinking about, okay, where are we going to throw Svech? Even Brenda Moore was like, because, there's the practice lines and everyone's like, oh my gosh, why is so-and-so on this line? And if you looked at it recently, Svech was on the fourth line. That's not where he's gonna be. And even Brenda Moore was like, I'm trying to figure out where to put him because of course he's not gonna be on the fourth line, but your first line kind of set. They've had so many opportunities. They haven't got all the cash ins for their opportunities. And then your second line's kind of been grooving too. I mean, I wouldn't split up Paul and KK. Maybe Roslovic, but Roslovic has been gelling with that line too. So it's kind of hard on where you put him. I mean, I don't envy Rod in figuring out these lines. I mean, I can't even begin to think about what happens when it seems like Carrier comes back in playoffs. So
Yes, I think naturally the protective way to do it is put Svech with the Jordans to kind of ease your way back in. I think a lot of people have penciled in Svech filling in for Roslovic on that second line and moving Roslovic down to that fourth line. Kind of that was the middle of the year that happened. Having those kind of lineups take place, like you said, that first line is set in stone. They've been having grade A opportunities. They just haven't been falling for the boys. So once that starts happening, that's a very dangerous first line. And again, if Svech can figure it out, then you've got some danger across the lineup. Because again, I said it last week, you have dogs, but you need dogs that can score too.
it's interesting to say him with the Jordans is protective since that's those like hard hitting line. So I don't know about protective, but it does fit. Like I know some people are like, well, he doesn't have his full potential when he's with them. But honestly, Stankoven and Jarvis have shown if you play well with the Jordans, you have opportunities. And like Svech can play physical with them just like Stank and Jarvis can, but he also has the ability to finish, especially like around the net. And that's really what we've been needing is we've just had some crazy shots around the net that we've just barely missed. And some of it's been puck luck. So it's going to be interesting fitting him back in. But
well, on that piece too, Marty has had some incredible passes, like from behind the net, just out in front,
through the legs, a dummy pat. Oh,
yeah. So he's been having some great looks. So if like Svech can be there, those are some that he should definitely finish as well. If he ends up on that line,
Stank had two amazing, and we'll talk about it later. Like we played the Predators, there were 2 months. He was literally on the doorstep, and only because Saros was doing Saros things did Stank not have 2 goals in that game. That line was honestly so well deserving of it. But it's one of those problems. It's like a good problem to have. Not okay. All these guys are injured. Who are we gonna throw in there? But now we're like, all right, now we have excess.
Correct. Yes. Shout out to the madman Eric Tulsky for giving Rod these problems to have, and even more problems that he's going to have in the long run. The kind of the pipeline that we have going in terms of prospects. Recently, Elite Prospects released their top 100 under 23 skaters rankings. Canes have 6 on this list.
We bet you can name them if you think real hard, but
yes. Which number 1 for the Canes, number 7 overall, Seth Jarvis. Haven't looked at the full list honestly, so I don't know who's 1 through 6. But we got Jarvie at 7. Stank at 47. Nikishin 51. Cannot wait for him.
It's gonna be really interesting. I think he's gonna go up that list pretty quick.
Oh, without a doubt. Nadeau at 86. Scott Morrow 94. And surprisingly, Jackson Blake all the way down at 98. I think that's the biggest surprise of this list.
I think it's because the season has just been a surprise for him because he was on coming at the beginning of the season. Him and Nadeau were kind of like, all right, are they gonna who's gonna crack it? And I think a lot of people were betting on Nadeau, who is blowing it up down with the Chicago Wolves, and very excited to see him. But Blake has just made a name for himself, and anytime someone questions why he's on a line, he really he puts in the work, he drives the net, he does these amazing passes. And some people are like, well, he's not really getting anything out of it. And I think they kind of asked Aho about that after the last game as well. And he was like, oh, it's going to come for him. And it gives me Jarvis vibes because we definitely had a season of Jarvis where he was doing everything, throwing the kitchen sink at the net anytime. And he just couldn't get that last bit of his game to go. Not anything to him, he's doing everything right. But that's kind of how Jackson Blake has now been recently, is he is doing everything right. He's getting the passes to them. He's fighting through much bigger opponents, and he's supporting and playing defense. He's doing everything there. It's just and he's right on the doorstep for the goals. And it's like, okay, well, this is his first season. He's this close. Again, it gives me Jarvis vibes where Jarvis was like, all right, next season I'm bulking up and I'm coming in hot. And that's what he did. So you can only expect more from Jackson Blake. But honestly, I'm excited for all the names you listed. I mean, we've seen what Morrow can do. We've seen what Nadeau can do. Stank really set the tone with us. He's only been with us a few games, but like the Bulldog and that kid is fantastic. Everyone was right. He's right on there on par. He is a hurricane in his DNA. And, I don't even have to say anything because I know I can hear people yelling from wherever they're listening to this. Nikishin is coming. Nikishin is coming. So I love that. That's it's a great thing. It's excess. I don't even know what else to say. It's just so much coming, and you're like, some people they're like, okay, well, we're just gonna throw away the season because their next season we're just gonna get more. And it's like, well, we're still in the fight now, but if something happens, if we don't win the cup, there's nothing to be upset about. Like, oh no, our team's gonna fall apart. We've lost our chance. Look at everything that's coming. I'm so excited.
Well, yeah, add in the cap space this offseason, too. I think a lot of people are
one
excited
of the richest
for
teams.
2025, 2026. But then, again, talking about the list, like, everyone's confident. There's no one who's like, oh, they look like deer in the headlights out there. Jackson Blake, unbelievably confident with the puck, making those pond-like highlights. Scott Morrow in his few games up there looks like a seasoned vet handling the puck. Nikishin, everyone's seen his highlights over in the KHL, what he can do. Stank, Dog, and Jarvis Jarvie. Like, these are guys who are in positions to be here for a long time and already are showing their potential. And again, like you said, Kat, Nadeau, everything he's doing in the AHL is definitely going to translate to the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see all of them. And it's interesting. Like, you can look at our team now and you kind of see where some guys are going to fit in when some contracts come up. But there's some other guys that are maybe like, fourth liners, guys that have smaller contracts that are really making a name to maybe get, those contracts. I mean, Hall's one of them. I think
he's not even a fourth liner.
No, he's not a fourth liner, but I'm saying like even Jank's making a case for himself. Like
Jank's here another year.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is like if he plays this way throughout his time with Carolina, he's gonna be like a set fourth liner. But I mean, I'm not unhappy. This team has found its groove. I said it earlier. There's no one in there like, where do they go? How do they fit? They're not really pulling their weight. I can't. If we're looking forward to future teammates, I can't look too far forward because honestly, I think the most important thing, one, Svech coming back, but I think I'm really excited for when you get the Jordans and Carrier back together because that line is just, you hate to see it coming. That's a truck coming at you. And the moment you try, you're like, oh, I avoided that truck. You get hit with another one, just a different angle.
That, like Tulsky said, that is Carrier built to be a Carolina Hurricane. That line, all three of them built to be Carolina Hurricanes in the way they play in Rod Brind'Amour's system.
100%. Well, if we're speaking of up and coming Carolina Hurricanes and the youth, we also have to talk about that I think they're opening up.
Correct. Yes, this is a coming Saturday rink opening for the roller rinks coming to Apex. So friends of the program, Doug Wharf, Shane Willis, they will be there at the unveiling. It'll be open to the public. So two 160 by 75 foot street hockey rinks feature aluminum prefabricated dashboard systems, player benches, penalty boxes, and so much more. So it's great to see the street hockey rinks getting implemented in the community because, again, as we talk about hockey continuing to grow down here in the South, down here in the Raleigh area, it's just fantastic to see. So like you said, hopefully future kids on the elite prospects list come up playing a little street hockey when they can't get the chance to get on the ice, and then own their skills that way.
Yeah, and the downtime to play street, like you see the guys practicing, playing some soccer and things like that. But between that and street hockey, kids are gonna have tons of, and maybe the equipment for street hockey is a little less expensive, but it would be a fun thing. So again, it's another thing that Doug Wharf has really talked about, very excited about when he was named president, because he's all about the community. And this is another opportunity for the Canes to really give back to the community around Raleigh. And I mean, I think it'd be fun. I personally think I'd break something trying to do that, but going out and doing that, I think a lot of kids will love to get involved with that.
Without a doubt. So those, again, if y'all are interested in attending the unveiling, it'll happen 2200 Laura Duncan Road in Apex. I believe the ceremony will take place at 2 p.m. Again, Saturday, 2 p.m. in Apex. Be there. Go see the friends of the program. Go see the new rink.
Oh, and I did see one rink is outfitted as a multi-purpose court. So it offers hockey, futsal, and basketball, but the other one will be strictly for hockey. So you've got even more. I mean, I love futsal, so I'll take that.
Love a good multi-purpose use facility without a doubt. But yeah, so those activities will be going on Saturday, but we'll have to rewind it to the activities that were going on, specifically games in the NHL that the Carolina Hurricanes took a part of. We have 4 games to go over. Our little trip out to Cali
Wasn't
as
terrible.
well as the game in Nashville, which is a little worse, but let's go ahead and break it down kind of game by game. So starting with the Sharks game, 3-1 dub at the end of the day, but
we didn't get Cali'd like the Bruins did recently, so that's great.
That's true.
Honestly, if I remember that game correctly, Freddie was in goal. Freddie has been kind of standing on his head for the last couple of games that he's been in. And it's kind of funny. I think I saw some fans, and I kind of agree. I mean, obviously with the last recent game, not the same, but everyone said, okay, come playoffs, we figured out who our goalies are going to be. It's going to be Piotr at home and Freddie on the road. And honestly, that's not terrible. Like, you do want to ride the hot goalie, but if they're both hot and they're both kind of in the groove like that, why not?
Yeah, especially whatever the stat for Freddie is on the road. Like, yeah, he's your road dog for sure. But I am not Rod Brindamore, nor am I inside of his head. So we'll see what he ends up doing there as well. But I kind of said a little bit on the pod last week that I felt like this was a trap game for them. And after Eklund's goal in the first to go down 1-0, I definitely thought. So I was a little worried to begin with, but then the boy showed up, specifically none other than Seth Jarvis. We love a Jarvie goal, and we all know the stat, and not by heart, but we have an ungodly win percentage when Seth Jarvis scores a goal.
Honestly, again, we'll get to it, but during the Nashville game, I was just like, maybe if Jarvis scores a goal, the tides will change. Because I was like, I know what happens when he scores. So sometimes you just have to pray. You're like, if 24 can get a goal, I know it's a win.
Yes.
But yeah, that was a great game because the Canes, came back. At first it was like, okay, when you had this little bit of a break and now we're, across the country. You're down a goal, not great. But you come in, Jarvis is like, well, let's level the playing fields. And quickly Carolina was like, no, we are a top team for a reason. Aho comes in, and then you also get Sean Walker really putting in the work. Honestly, it was a full team effort. That was a game you kind of need to win. You need to win it. That's how the Ducks game was. It's how Nashville should have been. It's a game you kind of want to win because it's a team that's not really going to be in the fight in the long run, but they're going to help you get points, going to help you stay up at the top of the standings, keep that ice advantage.
It was nice this game, though, just because it was the 8th straight one for the Canes.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, even after that break, even after traveling across the country, still being able to extend that winning streak was pretty huge because that will come to a crumbling halt versus the LA Kings. I'm sure this will be a short recap, but
I have thoughts. Okay. So the Canes 8-game win streak. All right. That's fantastic, especially after that. We don't want to talk about February. But I just gotta be really honest. The Kings are a wagon. The Kings are really good. You have to be on the top of your game when you play them. And the last 2 times we've played them, we have not been. Do I think the Carolina Hurricanes that played maybe one of those couple of games at the beginning of this win streak could have taken on the Kings and you would have had a very different score? Yeah. But this is a Canes team they've been traveling. I think this game you were missing Stahl, Ghost, Svetch was still out.
Yes.
Was Orlov out for this one?
No, he's back.
Okay, he was back.
For the goal.
Oh yeah, because you're right. So you're missing Ghost, you're missing Stahl, you're missing Svetch. The Kings are a physical team. So, and I know you're saying, well, the Canes really need to learn to play against these physical teams. I think they can, but you got to admit, like Stahl and Svetch can set the tone for physicality when they need to, and you're missing both of them during this game. Also, the reason that Stahl is because of block shot, Svetch was injury, Ghost was sickness, but they also said this was when the sickness was going around the locker room. So if you're going to say, well, he's sick, I'm going to say it's probably going around with some other guys because I don't think Carolina played bad this game. It wasn't terrible. You can't look at the score and say 7-2 while your goaltenders are terrible because the previous 8 games say otherwise. That was the most goals the Canes had either of their goaltenders let in quite a while.
Yeah, tough game for Cooch just based on the save percentage. Like that's a bad look. And Mike and Tripp said on the broadcast, like he's just gonna have to ride this one out because you have the back-to-back in the LA area with Anaheim. You're not gonna put Freddie in to kind of relieve him of these duties because Freddie was up versus Anaheim. Tough game, but you got to be able to bounce back. But to your point beforehand, Kat, like you said, the Kings being a wagon, specifically at home, the LA Kings are 26-3-4 at home, and they're 9-1 in their last 10. So to that point, you have to look at it and realize you're playing a really good team, a team that has the same
goals
amount.
were by 7 different players. That's a good team. That's wild.
Which, like you said, they didn't just do it to us. The following night or 2 later, they did it to the Boston Bruins as well. So, yeah, like you said, the Kings are absolutely rolling.
They're tired of being bullied by Edmonton. They're ready to go. But yeah, you know what though? After an 8 game, you're on the road, you're struggling with a little bit going on in the locker room. Like, I'm fine. It's fine if you lose that hard game because I don't think the Canes it wasn't that they played terrible. It wasn't that they just gave up. Like they fought that entire time. They got the 2 goals. The Kings were just again on top of it. Like 7 different guys scored. They had such good puck luck. They had shots where I think at least 2 or 3 of their goals hit the post and went in. Like that's a hard shot to make. Most of the time it hits the post and bounces out. It's more likely than not. But that was the Kings night. And honestly, the time we played them before was also the Kings night because we were also struggling with all the stuff with Rantanen. So, I mean, if we're going to do that, but then the bounce back by the Canes the next game was really what was going to matter.
That's right. And they did bounce back, luckily. 5-2 win over Anaheim with Freddie in goal. How about that? Back on the winning streak for a game.
Well, that's fine. You want to win on the road as much as possible because that's where the Canes, that's a big talking point for the Canes is when they struggle on the road because you don't have last change. Makes sense. You don't have the crowd behind you. And the Ducks, again, was just like the Sharks. Like, that's a game you need to win. But have yourself a game, Taylor Hall.
Throw the hats.
Oh.
Throw the hats for Taylor Hall. Yeah, like a guy that fits in so well with this team, a guy who's bought in. I think that has to be an all-time morale boost to go from the Blackhawks to the Canes. And he talked about it on his interview again today with the NHL Network. He said, it feels great to be able to think about the playoffs and what that's like in my first-round opponent. So I think him coming over here to be able to have the impact he's having has definitely rejuvenated him.
I mean, for him and Jank, because Jank had the opening goal. Like Jank is also on fire. Okay, of the acquisition. So when we're there at the trade deadline, all right, everyone's thinking, okay, the first big trade, Miko's the big star of that one. Nope, it's actually Taylor Hall. It was the sneaky underhanded, have yourself a night, Eric Tulski. And then you get the trade and you're like, well, you got Stankoven. That's fantastic. You've got all these picks. And then right at the wire, you're like, oh, we've got someone from the Predators. Who is this Jankowski? I don't know. He's a fourth liner. All right. And he comes in, he goes, hi, my name's Mark Jankowski. I'm going to score one in the next 6 games. Be ready. And it was like, all right. No one would have thought this was the big trade, but honestly, winning at it, and both guys really like they buy into the system to the point where it works for them. Like they're saying, okay, if I work hard, if I get myself to the front. Jankowski, both of their passes have been gorgeous. I need someone to get on the end of a Jank pass when he crosses it through the blue paint to finish that, because his passes for the limited ice time that he has, he's really, really productive with it. And then Taylor Hall is just all over the place. Like, honestly, put him on both power plays at this point because he wants it. He wants it. He's like, I'm going to earn myself a signing here. I'm going to earn it. And I'm going to prove to you that this is why I was top of my game all my career. Like, yeah, I've been on some bad teams. And yes, I'm a little older, but I can still play. I can still make an impact for your team for the better. And I mean, if they don't sign him soon, he's going to start pushing that price a little bit higher if he keeps having natties.
No, he'll be fine. But speaking of those two guys, so since the trade deadline, this stat comes to you via StatMuse. Both Taylor Hall and Mark Jankowski are tied for the 6th most goals in the NHL. Again, since the trade deadline. That's crazy. Both of them have 6 goals each since the deadline. We love that. Again, the Canes win the trade deadline. A lot of people are saying that. But it's like you said, it's amazing just the buy-in and being able to be rewarded. Again, while the top line is not, to see everyone else being able to step up when they're needed the most has been fantastic for them. So
sorry, I had to think of the next game, and I was just like, if I didn't want to talk about the Kings game, actually, I want to talk about the Kings game before I wanted to talk about the game after the Ducks, because I don't think I've had a frustrating game like the Predators game.
Grateful Dead night.
It's my least favorite. Listen, I love our theme nights. Absolutely love them. Did I forget this one was a theme night? 100%. I don't think it hit me in the face like most of the other theme nights do. But not really a fan of it. Nothing against the actual Grateful Dead. I just think the whole I don't want to say like personality, like the vibe of the theme kind of kept the game a little bit down, in my opinion. Like the crowd, it felt like a Saturday, like not a Saturday game, like a Sunday 5:00 game is what it felt like, where it was just like, okay. You're just like, la, da, da, like I got work the next day. I'm not really committed, or like you don't have the diehards because they're like, I can't do this on a Sunday night. It just felt very like, all right, we're coming to watch the team, but it wasn't like, all right, these guys are really like fighting it, like they're pushing, like throwing everything they can at Saros. Like there wasn't a bunch of crowd involvement, which in my opinion, this was a game that you really needed the crowd behind you to really push them to like get that one extra step, because they were right there at the door. They were ready. Saros was doing Saros things. Yes, Piotr should have probably had that first one. Rod said it too, where we were like literally shoving it back down their throats on the power play. We should have had some shorthanded shot like goals, except for Saros. And then they finally have a shot on their power play. Piotr thinks he has it. He doesn't. They just sneak it in there. Yeah, he should have had that one. But Carolina was running this game. Like the score makes no sense if you watched a lot of it. Like it was literally Saros, when the Canes would be like 80 to 90% down there throwing everything they have at him. And then the Breds would get one opportunity to come back and score. And you'd just be like, what was that? Like, I just did all this work and they did one thing and was rewarded, especially if you look at that shot count. We doubled them in shots.
More than doubled, which is disgusting in a bad way. You hate to see it. You also don't like that it was Michael Bunting that scored the goal, which I made the comment to Kat. Oh, I forgot Bunting's on this team as he got traded from one bad team to another. And granted, he had some words for Pyotr Kochetkov, made Pyotr kind of smirk a little bit. So nothing bad. Probably talking about their times before in Carolina, but it's like out of anyone, it really had to be him.
Yeah, and Bunting made a name for himself twice in the game with, getting that and then later getting a high stick to the helmet and going down like who was it? Chatty had like decapitated him. Like he was kicking his feet. I've never seen a guy throw a tantrum. And then
but his face got ripped open.
Sorry. There was all the Canes fans around us was very much like, what is happening? Like, we were like, if you're going to call embellishment, that's kind of wild. Because that's what you would call it on. Because he was like a toddler on the ice kicking and screaming. Well, not really screaming, just kicking his feet and being extra. To the point where people around us, some national people were like, you guys, you don't understand. His face is busted wide open. Bunting gets up. There's not a drop of blood anywhere.
He proceeds to go join the first line on the power play.
Yeah, he's fine. So this was just a game you just got to move on. It's a very frustrating game. I will say though, like the Kings game, it's just a frustrating loss. But I will take these two losses over the previous skids where it was just like, who is this team on the ice? Like you're losing and you just can't get anything going. You're just like, you don't know. It doesn't look like you have any chemistry. Your passes are terrible. Meanwhile, in these two games with Nashville and the Kings and the two losses in the last couple of games, the team looks good. Like they're having chances. That first line has so many chances. So did your second. Like there was actually every line really had some high danger opportunities. They just didn't get the puck luck or they got goalied. And it was just like, you're going to have those games. Right now, I feel like Canes fans and in general, everyone's just a little bit on edge because we went on such big losing skids that everyone's like, oh no, is it happening again? And like every time we lose, it's like, like it's a little bit of a dagger. But like if we had these normal type of losses throughout the season, I would have been like, yeah, that's fine. And so I think this one, I'm not as upset about them. It's just how the game they respond, kind of like how they responded with the Ducks after the Kings game. So it's going to be really exciting to see. They're at a home stretch. This should be where they play their best hockey, and this should be where they're the most comfortable. So it's going to be really exciting to see how the Canes respond in their next home game this Friday against the Canadiens.
Yes, which we will get to a little bit later. But first, we're going to take a break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back. The NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out and games left for you to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Hey, guess what, everyone? We are official affiliates of the NHL Shop. You know what that means?
Go shop. Go shop our link. If y'all are listening, the link is nhlshop.75j.net/JEZ6B6. We have it.
Do you guys remember that? You got that? Especially if you're driving.
we have it linked in all of our socials. So make sure y'all go check it out. It's the same shopping experience as you would by just going to the normal NHL shop or through Fanatics. But it helps us out in the long run as well. So what can people find there, Kat?
I mean, honestly, if you're looking to go shopping for things for the Carolina Hurricanes, maybe you have a friend that you kind of put up with that is a fan of another team and you want to get them something, maybe like a koozie or something. They can get their own jerseys if they're not Canes fans. But if they have some sale going on or anything and you're like, hey, I just want to buy something new, we just ask that when you think about that, go to our link and then do your shopping from there. That's really all you have to do. It's super easy. You don't even need a promo code. You don't need to remember all these ABC steps. Just go to our link, go ahead and go shopping and support your favorite podcast in the process.
Yeah, we definitely recommend buying jerseys too.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
but Canes jerseys
Well,
especially.
any jersey is a good jersey bought through our NHL Shop affiliate link. Again, the SurgeCast, an official affiliate of the NHL Shop.
All right. Thank you to all our wonderful sponsors. Of course, we wouldn't be where we are today without them. We really appreciate all of the work that our podcast network is doing and working with those sponsors with us, whether they're new, whether they're big, whether they're our OGs. We really love all of our sponsors. But as we were talking earlier, let's talk about that race in the Eastern Conference. And it's really interesting because there's like a couple different races going on. I did mention earlier that the Carolina Hurricanes thankfully aren't in that wild card rat race that's going on right now. We've kind of separated ourselves from that. But there is a race that, it's not going to be number one, but it's who wants to be number two in the Eastern Conference.
Yes, this is our second attempt at talking about who's going to be second.
Guess what, guys? We have audio issues too.
Yes. So our second attempt at the back end of this podcast. Hope you all enjoy it because we're giving double the effort
this is
here.
this is what happens when we put the paid intern in front of the camera, so we can't troubleshoot it on the back end. So I hope you guys really, if you're listening to this, send all the love his way because he's got it double these 2 weeks he's been on and he's done all the work on the back end. So we really appreciate our paid intern and all the work he puts in and with all he puts up with me and Zach.
With that said, like we were talking about, the race for the second in the East is the big story. With the Carolina Hurricanes in their retooling year, have the opportunity to compete for that second spot in the East. So as it stands right now, as of this recording, all of the Carolina Hurricanes, Toronto Maple Leafs, Florida Panthers, and Tampa Bay Lightning have played 71 games each. The Lightning are at 72 now, officially. Canes have 90 points. Maple Leafs have 89 points, as well as the Panthers and Lightning. So it is neck and neck. It's as neck and neck as a wild card race is. It's as neck and neck for the second overall spot in the East, which will be huge for playoff implications.
Honestly, if you had told me not that long ago that we were fighting for second in the Eastern Conference with the Maple Leafs, Panthers, and Lightning, I would have been like, what? And especially if you're going to tell me at the beginning of the season, everyone considered this a retooling year for us. And then to go in with that and say, yeah, you're going to go on some big losing streaks as well and have some weird stuff going on in the trade deadline. I would never have put Carolina in the spot they're in, but I love it. They fought at the beginning of the season to get themselves at a very good spot. So even when they had maybe some chaos on the ice in the locker room and the media, and they just couldn't find their groove, it didn't hurt them in the way that a lot of other teams would have fallen. And even injuries, like we talked about Svetch earlier, and guys in and out at different times. I mean, you can see the Jersey Devils, they did really well, but they've also been struggling as of late because of their injuries. Thankfully, the Hurricanes, they've been able to kind of just stay steady and keep that spot.
Yeah, an 8-game winning streak will help you out in that department. It'll help anyone out in that department. So as the season progresses, this last stretch of games here, it'll be interesting to find out who's hot, who's not, and what that'll mean long term. Because again, the Canes aren't falling past the Devils, so you'll have a home ice there. I'm a big believer in the President's Cup curse. So I think that
knock on wood, we all want that curse to be real.
I'm going to bite there and say that they could definitely get past the Caps for that reason alone. And then hopefully, too, the Great Chase has ended their momentum. All wishful thinking on my end, but I am very hopeful for it.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen at a point this season, the Capitals were without Ovechkin because he broke his leg. So I think they they have momentum going forward with or without him, but maybe once they hit that stride, Ovi will just be like, all right, calm down a little bit. But honestly, listen, we saw what happened with the Boston Bruins, who were on an absolute tear and they were winning the President's Cup. So, I mean, you never know what happens when it comes to playoffs. That's also why this wild card race is so interesting because the teams that are fighting for it, I mean, you're going to crawl your way in and like you just never know what's going to come from that. I mean, other wild card teams have gone on and caused some chaos before. I mean, look at the Panthers at one point. So what's really interesting though is that we're talking about the Capitals being so far out, both the Capitals and if we're talking about who else has clinched, the Winnipeg Jets are already in playoff spots. But if you're looking at the wild card, currently there's no other Metro teams besides, Carolina Hurricanes and New Jersey Devils. But the wild card, the Metro's they're right there looking on from the outside in.
Well, yes, and they are, but barely. Both the Canadians and Islanders have played 71 games. Islanders are only 1 point away from the Canadians, so these games this
It's going to be a
weekend,
photo finish.
yes, these games this weekend here in Raleigh are going to be huge for both of our opponents, so that will impact a lot, I'm sure. But yeah, Rangers, you could still say they're in it. The Blue Jackets, even the Red Wings, you could still say they're all in it, as they are within 3 points of each other. The games played differs a little bit, so that'll obviously pay off in the long run to see where teams land coming the final days of the season. But that race for the wild card is fairly wide open. They're probably all going to get hammered by Washington, but again, who knows? Because again, you just have to have a team get hot at the right time. That's another thing Taylor Hall talked about in his NHL Network interviews. Like, we're hitting our stride at the perfect time heading into the playoffs. So, depending on who the opponent is, and if they go on a game winning streak as well, then that could be a dangerous team there. Whoever finishes the second wild card, because first wild card Ottawa, that's pretty set in stone. I'm very hopeful for a Florida Ottawa first round. Get me some Kachuk violence. That'll be must watch TV, as will the Colorado Dallas series in the first round too.
I wonder if Manny Kachuk will come off his LTIR for that.
Guaranteed.
It is interesting, honestly, of all those teams. I'm really pushing for the Columbus Blue Jackets to get into that wild card spot. I think that would be a great story for them. They'd prove so many people wrong, including Zach Bailey and I, as we did our predictions. I mean, the Capitals have already proved us super wrong. But I will also do a little happy dance. I'm not going to lie. As a Carolina Hurricanes, I'm going to do a little happy dance if the Rangers and the Bruins miss the playoffs, especially in a year that everyone said the Canes would be the ones taking a step back and retooling. It's the little wins, man. It's the little wins. I'll take it. But yeah, it's very interesting. You've got the Senators kind of locked in that first one, but the Montreal Canadiens, they are neck and neck with the New York Islanders. And guess who the Canes play this weekend?
The Canadians and Islanders.
The Canadians and Islanders. So they're both kind of hoping the Canes win against the other. We've got some interesting past games with these two teams.
We do. So starting off with the Canadians, who we will play tomorrow / today, whenever you're listening, Friday the 28th, 7 p.m. puck drop. First game against the Canadians was our mini Canada trip after the Four Nations break, and that was an ugly loss, 0-4. So Canes were definitely hoping to bounce back. We have a much different team now than we did then. The vibes are much higher in that locker room too, so that should hopefully turn things around there.
Speaking of a young team too, that we talked about, like the young prospects and everything. The Canadians have a young team, and they are also starting to hit their stride. Like, some you're like, well, they're not, like, they're young, but they've been around for a while. But they have some interesting players on there. But I honestly am always just hoping that KK scores. Like, I hope he scores anyway on times because he really deserves it with the work he does around there and he rewards his teammates. But every time we play the Canadians, I just want KK to score because I just feel like it's a little redemption. So whether we win or lose, I always want him to score. But then when you look at the Islanders, and this is why at the beginning, when we did our predictions, I told Zach the Islanders always crawl from the grave and they're like, we're back. And you're just like jump scare because they're all of a sudden, you're like, how did you make it here? Whether it's their overtime wins or all of a sudden they're winning some games. And you're just like, how? Because it never feels like they should quite be there because they never seem to do the big moves or like do crazy stuff, but they're just there. And look at them. They're right there knocking their way 1 point behind the Canadians for that wild card. So I'm tired of seeing them. So I kind of want them to go away. But you never know. Again, come on, Blue Jackets.
Well,
come on, Blue Jackets.
As you said, you never know. And with the Canes schedule versus Islanders this year, we really don't know because the Canes are 1-1-1 against the Islanders on the season. Those quick turnaround games back in December, Canes lost the first one, won the second, and then they had the overtime loss in the end of January.
Mhm.
So anything can happen in the return of Tony DeAngelo.
Well, what is a high probability is he will score on his own net. And that's also, again, if I'm cheering for KK to score, I'm also cheering for TDA to score on his own team. But really, Aho loves to see Tony DeAngelo coming.
The roof would blow off Lenovo Center if Tony did that. But those games are big again, as we talked about with the playoff implications.
All three teams could use points. We could use the points to stay above the Leafs and Panthers and Lightning. But really, the Canadians and the Islanders are going to fight hard because this is just them getting into the race. Like, we have a spot. It's where we want to be in the race. For them, they just want to be a part of it. So that's going to be really interesting. And honestly, I can see the Islanders being a little fired up. Well, first of all, the Canadians are on like a little bit of a losing streak. So they have a lot that they want to get back into this. The Islanders are also fired up because they recently, which I don't agree with the Islanders a whole bunch, but they recently have been in the news about them complaining about goaltender interference and the reviews from Toronto. And honestly, I don't know if a lot of people disagree with them because the case they were fighting was it really goaltender interference? And then if it was, does Toronto even like, are they even being helpful? Or are they just kind of backing up the refs? So I think it's an interesting discussion. Goaltender interference, I could talk about it for days.
Well, what does Trip Tracy say?
Honestly, whatever Trip Tracy says, you can count it's the opposite. Unfortunate. And I think he knows that now. So we'll have to ask Trip and then see what he says. But I think, yeah, of the two things that I could talk about the most would be goaltender interference and the league just botching that nonstop. And then what someone said, a recent tweet, I won't get into it in this episode, one episode, maybe in the offseason, I'll talk about it, is why the Canes are not in as many promo stuff for the NHL as the rest of the teams. But I won't get into that right now. What I will get into is the team at the bottom of the Metro Division and the Philadelphia Flyers recently letting go of their head coach.
Keep them away from Bedard. That's all I have to say
Honestly,
on that.
keep him away from any team you really like. He has a method to his madness. I don't think I agree with most of it because, like, we've talked about this before. A lot of things I'll talk about, like, based on fantasy. You could have this season. I think it was Mitchkov that I had. You would have players that would be good young players for the Flyers. And then all of a sudden they'd be out a game and you're like, did he get injured? I didn't hear anything about him being injured. And then you'd look and they'd be like scratched for no reason. And then they'd ask and they'd be like, oh yeah, they just gotta keep earning their way into the lineup. Or like it's a learning thing. I think even recently with I think I saw for tonight in their game, since Torts has been fired, they had someone dress and sit on the bench, but he never played a shift. And someone asked him about it, and they said, "Yeah, it's a disciplinary thing." And I'm like, how much of this at this point is it the team, and how much of it is the coaching staff? Because I feel like the whole team is rebelling at this point, and nobody cares.
Yeah, again, keep him away from Bedard. That's all I have to say about that. But
that kid would really hate playing hockey if he had to.
yes,
Oh,
yes. But to your point, though, again, it's one thing to kind of bring, your fourth liners in and out of the lineup, but to have stars in the making like Michkov, stars like Konecki not playing, it doesn't make any sense. So, see you later, pal. Good luck wherever you end up. But I think that is all for part 2, version 2 of this episode. If we have anything else to go through here.
Honestly, I'm just excited for this upcoming weekend. Go and enjoy the games.
Yes.
You'll get to see. It'll be interesting. You got some teams really wanting to fight, and you got the Canes wanting to get back on the winning side of things. I mean, once you get a taste of that 8-game win streak, you really want to keep winning and showing the world like we're not falling back, we're moving forward. And so I'm very excited to see that. Get out, enjoy the weather. Hope the vibes are high for some Friday night hockey. Hope the vibes are high for Sunday. Move on from Grateful Dead night. I just don't want to think about that game or night anymore. But yeah, it's a good time to be a Carolina Hurricanes fan. You're just on the up and up.
Yeah, like we've said multiple times, being second in the East in a retooling year,
with
that's a pretty
only
great time.
Positives to come in the next couple years.
A lot of cap space, a lot of
cap
space,
a lot of prospects. Your big guys are already signed to long deals.
Yeah, Canes are set up for the long run.
But well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to our paid intern for filling in for Zach this week. Again, sound off in the comments or reshare anything. Really give him some love for putting in double the work and dealing with me and Zach. But yeah, again, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the SurgeCast. We'll see you next week.
On Tuesday on the SurgeCast, because we won't spoil any of the Ovechkin stuff. We're saving that for next week.
Bye, guys.